Why do you feel the urge to explain yourself the moment you sense doubt in someone's eyes? The instant silence stretches too long, the second your decision is questioned. Why does your mind rush to justify, clarify, soften, defend, as if your worth depends on being understood right now? Machiavelli would say that this instinct, so deeply human it feels innocent, is one of the most reliable ways power leaks out of a person without resistance. From the moment you speak to explain yourself, you have already shifted position. You are no longer standing on ground of authority. You are negotiating. You are reacting. You are placing your internal logic on trial before an audience that did not earn access to it. Explanation feels reasonable, even virtuous, but beneath it lies fear. Fear of misinterpretation, fear of judgment, fear of losing status. Power does not live where fear dictates speech. Machiavelli understood something brutal and enduring about human psychology. People do not respect explanations, they exploit them. Explanation signals uncertainty about one's own legitimacy. It tells the listener that your decision, your boundary, your action requires validation to stand. And the moment something requires validation, it becomes fragile. In courts and councils, Machiavelli watched rulers unravel themselves not through cruelty or incompetence, but through excessive justification. They spoke too much. They reasoned aloud. They tried to be understood by everyone. And in doing so, they trained others to believe that authority was debatable, conditional, and open for negotiation. Power, once invited into debate, rarely survives intact. The urge to explain is rooted in a childlike strategy we carry into adulthood. When misunderstood, we learn to correct the misunderstanding. When challenged, we learn to defend ourselves. When doubted, we learn to prove our intentions. But the world of power is not the world of childhood fairness. It is a world of perception, hierarchy, and positioning. In that world, explanation is not neutral. It is a signal. The signal says, I am uncertain enough to justify myself. I am accessible enough to question. I am invested enough in your approval to persuade you. None of these strengthen your position. They expose it. Machiavelli believed that authority is felt before it is understood. People follow decisiveness not because it is always correct, but because it relieves them of uncertainty. Explanation reintroduces uncertainty. It invites others into the internal process that should have remained closed. Once people see your internal struggle, they stop trusting your external command. Consider how often explanations fail to achieve their intended effect. You explain your boundary, and it gets pushed further. You explain your decision, and it becomes a debate. You explain your absence, and it becomes a judgment. Explanation does not close doors, it opens them. Those who understand power do the opposite. They state, they act, they move on. Their silence after action is not arrogance, it is containment. Machiavelli knew that containment is strength. The less others know about your reasoning, the harder it is to manipulate, undermine, or corner you. People assume that explanation creates trust. In reality, consistency creates trust. Calm creates trust. Predictability of action creates trust. Explanation creates familiarity, and familiarity breeds entitlement. Once people feel entitled to your reasoning, they feel entitled to your compliance. This is where most lose power without realizing it. They explain to be liked. They explain to avoid conflict. They explain to be seen as fair. But fairness, in the Machiavellian sense, is not about disclosure. It is about outcome. A ruler who explains every move may feel morally upright, but they will soon find themselves surrounded by advisors who argue instead of obey. Power does not demand obedience, it conditions it. The dangerous individual understands this conditioning intuitively. They do not rush to clarify. They do not fill silence with reasoning. When challenged, they pause. That pause does more work than any explanation ever could. Silence forces others to confront uncertainty on their own. Most people are uncomfortable there. They retreat, they soften, they recalibrate. Machiavelli observed that people interpret silence according to their own fears. When you do not explain yourself, others supply the explanation themselves, often in ways that elevate your position rather than diminish it. They assume confidence. They assume control. They assume deliberateness. Explanation robs them of that projection. There is another layer, colder and more unsettling. Explanation gives away your logic. Once your logic is known, it can be anticipated. Once anticipated, it can be countered. The person who explains teaches others how to defeat them. This is why Machiavelli warned against transparency of intention, not because intention is evil, but because intention, once visible, becomes predictable. Predictability is the enemy of power. Power thrives on asymmetry, asymmetry of information, asymmetry of intention, asymmetry of preparation. The more you explain, the more symmetrical the relationship becomes. You flatten hierarchy. You turn command into conversation. You invite negotiation where there should have been acceptance. This does not mean becoming cruel or irrational. It means understanding that explanation is a strategic resource, not a reflex. You do not owe your inner process to everyone who questions you. You do not owe emotional access to those who test your resolve. You do not owe clarity before clarity serves you. Machiavelli saw that the most stable rulers were not the most articulate, but the most reserved. Their words were few. Their actions were consistent. Their silence was intentional. When they spoke, it was not to justify, but to declare. Declaration ends discussion. Explanation prolongs it. Watch how people react when you stop explaining yourself. At first, there is discomfort. They probe. They ask follow-up questions disguised as concern. They challenge under the mask of curiosity. This is not interest, it is recalibration. They are testing whether your silence is weakness or strength. If you break and explain, the test is answered. If you remain calm, present, and unmoved, something shifts. The questions slow, the tone changes, respect creeps in quietly, not because you demanded it, but because you did not chase it. Machiavelli understood that power often emerges when you refuse to play the role others assign you. Explanation is often a role forced upon you, the accused, the subordinate, the one seeking approval. Silence rejects the role without confrontation. There is a deep psychological reason this works. Humans are pattern-seeking. When a familiar pattern breaks, attention sharpens. Silence, where explanation is expected, disrupts expectation. Disruption forces reassessment. Reassessment often elevates the one who disrupted the pattern. This is why the most dangerous individuals rarely argue. They do not win debates. They end them by disengaging. Their disengagement is not defeat, it is dominance. It signals that the debate itself was irrelevant. Machiavelli would remind you that arguing is F or equals. Explanation implies equality of authority. If you truly hold position, you do not argue it into existence, you inhabit it. The modern world has inverted this truth. It celebrates openness, vulnerability, constant clarification. It encourages people to narrate their inner lives publicly. This creates a culture where those who explain the most are rewarded with attention, not authority. Attention is fleeting. Authority endures. Those who never explain themselves are not admired immediately. They are felt gradually. Their presence stabilizes rooms. Their decisions feel final. Their silence becomes meaningful. People begin to adjust around them, often without realizing why. This is the beginning of the cold advantage Machiavelli described. It is not emotional emptiness, it is emotional containment. It is the refusal to bleed internally in public. As this sinks in, you may feel resistance. It feels unnatural. It feels unfair. It feels like withholding something essential. That discomfort is the residue of conditioning. You were trained to explain yourself to survive socially. You were rewarded for transparency. You were punished for silence. But Machiavelli was not interested in social comfort. He was interested in durability. Durability requires boundaries. Boundaries require silence. Silence requires discipline. And discipline is where power lives when the noise fades. This is only the beginning. Once you recognize that explanation weakens position, you begin to notice how deeply the instinct to justify is woven into everyday life. It is everywhere. In conversations where someone says, "I only did that because," before anyone even asked. In decisions softened with excess context. In boundaries padded with apologies. In authority diluted by friendliness. Most people explain not because it is required, but because they are afraid of the emotional consequences of not doing so. They fear misinterpretation more than they fear loss of power, not realizing the two are rarely separable. Machiavelli understood that fear of misinterpretation is a subtle form of dependence. The moment you care more about how your action is perceived than whether it stands on its own, you have surrendered internal authority. You are no longer acting from position, you are reacting to imagined judgment. This is where power begins to decay invisibly, long before any overt challenge appears. Explanation is often framed as clarity, but clarity for whom? Rarely for the speaker. It is clarity offered to soothe others. It is an emotional concession disguised as reason, and every concession teaches people how to push further next time. Once you explain once, explanation becomes expected. Once expected, silence is interpreted as guilt. This is how the trap closes. Machiavelli observed that power structures collapse not when leaders are challenged, but when they train others to believe challenge is appropriate. Explanation is training. It teaches people that your decisions are open to evaluation, that your boundaries are flexible, that your authority is conditional. You can see this dynamic clearly in environments where explanation is excessive, meetings where every decision requires a justification spiral into endless debate, relationships where every boundary must be explained turn into negotiations without end, leadership where every action is clarified becomes management by consensus, and consensus is slow, fragile, and easily hijacked by the loudest or most persistent voices. The dangerous individual does not eliminate explanation entirely, they simply remove it from reflex. Explanation becomes rare, strategic, and delayed. It is offered only when it strengthens position, never when it weakens it. This distinction is everything. Timing matters more than truth. Machiavelli knew that truth revealed at the wrong time does not enlighten, it destabilizes. When you explain yourself immediately, you give others the illusion of access to your internal process. This access creates familiarity. Familiarity erodes distance. Distance is not coldness, it is structure. Without structure, relationships collapse into emotional bargaining. Silence, on the other hand, preserves structure. It creates a psychological vacuum. Humans hate vacuums. They rush to fill them with assumptions, projections, narratives. Most of those narratives elevate the silent figure rather than diminish them. People assume there must be a reason for the silence. They imagine confidence, deliberation, authority. You did nothing to earn this projection, and that is precisely why it works. Explanation kills projection. When you explain, you replace mystery with detail. Detail invites analysis. Analysis invites criticism. Criticism invites challenge. Silence blocks this entire chain. This is why Machiavelli emphasized the importance of appearing resolute rather than reasonable. Reasonableness invites debate. Resolution ends it. People do not need to understand your reasoning to follow you. They need to believe you are certain. Certainty is not loud, it is still. The compulsion to explain is often strongest in those who are intelligent. They believe that logic will protect them. They believe that if others understand their reasoning, agreement will follow. Machiavelli would call this intellectual vanity. Humans do not align with logic, they align with power, safety, and momentum. Logic is often used after tea. He fact to justify alignment already chosen. This is why explanations so often fail to persuade. They arrive too late. The emotional decision has already been made. Your explanation becomes noise layered on top of a conclusion that was never waiting for it. Worse, explanation exposes your internal priorities. What you emphasize reveals what you fear losing. What you justify reveals what you value most. Once these values are visible, they can be leveraged against you. The person who explains teaches others exactly where to apply pressure. Machiavelli saw that the most effective. Rulers never revealed what mattered to them most. They acted consistently but opaquely. Others could predict behavior but not motive. This distinction is critical. Predictable behavior builds trust. Hidden motive preserves power. When people know why you act, they learn how to influence you. When they only know that you act, they adjust themselves accordingly. There is also a moral illusion attached to explanation. People believe that explaining themselves makes them good, fair, and just. Machiavelli dismantled this illusion ruthlessly. He did not deny morality. He denied its utility as a public performance. He knew that appearing moral and being effective are not the same thing, and that public morality often becomes a leash held by others. Those who never explain themselves are accused of arrogance, coldness, or secrecy. These accusations are attempts to provoke disclosure. They are social pressure disguised as moral critique. The moment you rush to explain to defend your character, the pressure has succeeded. The dangerous individual allows these accusations to hang unanswered, not because they are true, but because answering them gives them weight. Silence starves them. Over time, something interesting happens. People stop demanding explanations, not because they understand you better, but because they sense that explanation is not available. Expectations shift, boundaries solidify, your presence alone becomes enough. This is when power stabilizes. Machiavelli knew that stable power is quiet. It does not argue for itself. It does not justify itself. It does not defend itself emotionally. It exists, and others adapt. You begin to feel this shift internally as well. The urge to over-explain weakens. You become comfortable letting others misunderstand you temporarily. You realize that misunderstanding is often safer than over-clarity. Not everyone deserves access to your reasons. Not everyone asking for explanation is acting in good faith. Silence becomes a filter. Those who respect you remain. Those who sought leverage drift away. This is not loneliness, it is refinement. And as this discipline settles in, you start to recognize a deeper truth Machiavelli hinted at but never stated directly. Explanation is not about communication, it is about control. Whoever demands explanation is attempting to assert dominance over the narrative. Whoever provides it prematurely cedes that control. The moment you stop explaining yourself reflexively, the balance shifts. You are no longer pulled into others' frames. You are no longer defending your existence. You are simply acting from it. This is the ground power stands on. As the habit of silence deepens, a sharper awareness follows. You begin to feel the moment when explanation would have once rushed out of you and you let it pass. That moment is not empty, it is charged. It is the moment when power decides whether to remain intact or be handed away politely. Machiavelli understood that power is not lost in dramatic collapses, but in small, repeated concessions made to relieve discomfort. Discomfort is the true enemy here. The tension of being misunderstood, the unease of letting others sit with us, are tainty about you. The anxiety that silence might be interpreted as guilt, weakness, or ignorance. Most people cannot tolerate this tension. They explain to dissolve it, but in doing so, they transfer the tension onto themselves permanently. They become responsible for managing others' emotions. The one who never explains refuses this burden. Machiavelli observed that when you remove explanation, you also remove negotiation. People test less, they push less, they adjust more. Not because you are aggressive, but because you are opaque. Opacity creates caution. Caution creates respect. There is a subtle shift that occurs when you stop explaining yourself consistently. Others begin to monitor themselves more closely around you. They become careful with tone. They choose words deliberately. They hesitate before challenging. This is not because you have intimidated them, but because you have removed the usual feedback loops that reassure them they are safe to push. Explanation reassures, silence destabilizes. This destabilization forces recalibration. Humans are constantly mapping social hierarchies even when they deny it. When you explain yourself, you place yourself on the same plane as the questioner. When you remain silent, the plane tilts. They feel it immediately, even if they cannot articulate why. Machiavelli knew that hierarchy is rarely declared. It is felt, and it is felt through asymmetry. Who speaks more, who clarifies, who justifies, who reacts, who waits. These patterns establish rank long before titles or roles are invoked. The person who explains is reactive. The person who waits is central. You also begin to notice how often explanation is used as a trap. Questions that are not seeking understanding but leverage. Curiosity that masks judgment. Concern that masks control. When you explain, you legitimize the question. You confirm that the asker standing over your internal process. Silence denies them that standing. This is why Machiavelli advised rulers to be sparing with words, not because words are dangerous in themselves, but because they create records. Records can be used. Once spoken, your reasoning can be quoted, distorted, turned against you. Silence leaves no handle. Even when explanation is demanded aggressively, the cold response is stillness, not defiance, not contempt, simply refusal to be pulled into a frame that weakens position. This refusal unsettles people more than confrontation ever could. They expect resistance, they expect argument, they do not expect absence. Absence forces them to confront themselves. Another realization emerges here, one that cuts against modern sensibilities. Being understood is not a prerequisite for effectiveness. In fact, the need to be understood often interferes with effectiveness. Machiavelli would say that understanding is a luxury afforded after power is secured, not before. Those who explain themselves too early try to secure legitimacy before securing position. They want moral clarity before structural stability. This inversion guarantees fragility. Once position is secured, explanation becomes optional. Before it is secured, explanation is fatal. You see this clearly in those who rise quickly and fall just as fast. They narrate every step. They justify every decision. They build their identity on being perceived as reasonable. The moment circumstances shift, that reasonableness becomes a liability. People demand more explanation, more compromise, more access. Authority dissolves under the weight of transparency. Machiavelli saw that power requires a certain unavailability, not cruelty, not distance for its own sake, but non-accessibility to constant evaluation. Evaluation is corrosive when it never ends. Silence ends evaluation by refusing to participate in it. This also changes how you experience criticism. When you explain yourself, criticism feels personal because you have invested your inner logic into public space. When you do not explain, criticism loses traction. It floats without anchor. It may exist, but it does not penetrate. The cold mind learns to let criticism pass without internal reaction, not because it is ignored, but because it is assessed privately. Useful criticism is absorbed silently. Useless criticism is starved of response. Both outcomes preserve power. Machiavelli understood that responding emotionally to criticism is another form of explanation. Anger explains insecurity. Defensiveness explains fear. Justification explains doubt. Silence explains nothing, and therefore invites nothing. There is also a strategic patience that develops here. You begin to see that many challenges resolve themselves if you do not engage. People tire. Their energy dissipates. Their certainty weakens. By the time you would have finished explaining yourself, the challenge would already be gone. Time, when paired with silence, becomes a weapon. This is why the most dangerous individuals appear unhurried. They are not pressured by immediate perception. They are oriented toward outcome. They understand that today's misunderstanding is tomorrow's irrelevance if position is maintained. As this settles, your speech changes, not in volume but in density. When you do speak, it is shorter, cleaner, declarative. You state facts, decisions, boundaries. You do not narrate the internal journey that led there. Others begin to listen more closely because your words are no longer padded with reasoning. Scarcity increases value. Machiavelli knew that speech, like currency, loses value when over-circulated. The more you speak, the less weight each word carries. Silence concentrates weight. One sentence from Psalm. One who rarely explains themselves carries more authority than a paragraph from someone who explains constantly. This is not mystique, it is conditioning. People learn what to expect from you. If you always explain, they expect explanation. If you never do, they stop asking. Expectations shape behavior. Behavior shapes power. You begin to feel something else as well, relief. The burden of managing others' interpretations lifts. You are no longer performing coherence for an audience. You are simply acting. This internal relief is often mistaken for coldness by those who still depend on emotional exchange. Let them. Machiavelli was clear-eyed about this cost. He knew that restraint would be misunderstood by those who equate warmth with virtue. But he also knew that power cannot survive constant emotional accessibility. Something must remain closed. At this stage, explanation feels almost unnecessary. You understand that the world does not reward clarity of intention, it rewards consistency of action. And consistency requires fewer words, not more. You are no longer explaining yourself to exist. You are existing and letting others adjust. This is the posture power recognizes. There comes a moment when silence is no longer a tactic but a transformation. You stop thinking of explanation as something you resist and start experiencing it as something beneath you, not in arrogance, but in clarity. You realize that the urge to explain was never about truth or fairness. It was about anxiety. Anxiety about losing control of the narrative, anxiety about being misread, anxiety about not being liked. Machiavelli would say, this anxiety is the final chain binding you to weakness. Power does not live in reassurance, it lives in stability. By now, you feel the difference in your body. Your posture changes, your breathing slows. You no longer lean forward to convince, you know. Longer rush to repair discomfort. You allow pauses to exist without filling them. You allow people to sit with their questions unanswered. And something profound happens in those moments. You remain whole. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop fragmenting your authority. You stop distributing pieces of your internal logic to people who will misuse it, misunderstand it, or weaponize it. You reclaim containment. Containment is what separates influence from exposure. Machiavelli understood that the strongest figures were not those who inspired the most affection, but those who inspired the most adjustment. Others adjusted their behavior around them instinctively. They spoke differently. They acted more carefully. They hesitated before challenging. This adjustment did not come from fear. It came from certainty, the certainty that explanation was not available, negotiation was limited, and reaction was unlikely. You are now seeing the deeper architecture of power. It is not dominance. It is not intimidation. It is not charisma. It is refusal. Refusal to be pulled into frames that weaken you. Refusal to justify existence. Refusal to translate your inner world for those who have not earned access to it. The world trains you to believe that silence must be justified, that boundaries must be explained, that decisions must be defended. This training produces compliant, exhausted people who spend their lives narrating themselves into smaller and smaller spaces. Machiavelli rejected this entirely. He understood that the one who never explains does not shrink. They solidify. Solid people become reference points. When you stop explaining yourself, people begin to reference you instead of questioning you. Your reactions become benchmarks. Your silence becomes data. Your presence becomes stabilizing. This is how authority forms without announcement. And now comes the irreversible shift. You realize that explanation was never protecting you. It was protecting others from their discomfort with your autonomy. The moment you stop explaining, you force others to manage their own uncertainty. Most cannot. They either adapt or withdraw. Let them. This is the cost of power. You will be misunderstood. You will be projected onto. You will be labeled cold, distant, arrogant, difficult. These labels are not truths. They are withdrawal symptoms from people who no longer have access to you. Machiavelli would tell you to treat these labels as confirmation, not criticism. You are no longer available for casual dominance. At this stage, you no longer need to remember the rule. It has become instinct. When questioned, you pause. When challenged, you hold still. When misunderstood, you let it remain unresolved. You act, and you let action stand on its own. Action does not explain itself. It proves itself. This is where power stops being something you seek and becomes something you inhabit. You are not trying to control others, you are controlling access to yourself. That is the deepest form of control there is. Now the final choice stands before you, and it is not theoretical. From this moment forward, you will feel the impulse to explain rise again and again, in meetings, in relationships, in conflict, in moments where silence feels dangerous. Each time, you will decide who you are. You can explain and be consumed, or you can remain silent and be felt. So do not soften your boundaries, do not narrate your decisions, do not apologize for your clarity, do not translate your power into comfort for others. Let your actions speak once, let your silence echo longer, let your presence do the work explanation never could. Stop explaining yourself, power dies there. Stand still, hold position, let the world adjust to you.